my people? My name is Stifflered, and welcome to the Cafe, where we talk about tools, tips, and tricks to take your Minecraft creations to the next level. It is time for Friends of the Server podcast, episode number 4, and guys, I gotta tell you, I'm so thrilled with this episode. This was such a great time. I think you're really going to enjoy the interview that is up ahead. Before I get into all that though, I've got a couple of little housekeeping things to take care of. First off, I do apologize. I know this podcast is a day late and I didn't have so many videos come out last week, but I was away at Gen Con, which, if you aren't familiar with Gen Con, it is a massive convention in Indianapolis that happens every year. It's like 75,000 people that attend, and I work the event with another company called Conceptopolis. And I spent the last week over there, and oh my goodness, my voice right now is a little bit sore, and and it's just been hard to get this video and other videos together, but I think that it'll be worth the wait once you listen to this episode and interview. Second of all, I want to thank the sponsors of this channel and this podcast. You guys know who you are out there, especially Wing Champ is the latest donator to my channel. And I appreciate that support very much. If you guys would like to support the channel and help keep the internet bills paid and the lights turned on, there will be a link in the show notes. All right, now that we've taken care of all that housekeeping, it is time to get into the meat of this podcast. And I've got to tell you guys, like this interview with my guest today that I recorded a week ago now, man, it is cool. Gianluca is the former server owner, and actually he's got some projects he's working on right now. He has worked on some major projects in the past. He has experience working with YouTubers with millions of subscribers. He has worked on large server networks with thousands of players that are online concurrently, and he works full-time in Minecraft. He works full-time in Minecraft. It is just incredible that I had the opportunity to interview him and to record this podcast, and I think that you guys are really going to enjoy this. If you have questions about, approaching YouTubers for promoting your server or running a large server network or making money on your Minecraft servers, then this is the podcast that you want to listen to. I will mention that there are a few little issues with the sound quality. Gianluca is in South Africa, and the recording that we had, our connection broke up a little bit, but I tried to edit it so that you guys could still understand everything that he was saying and get that message that he wants to send to you. If you'd like to catch more episodes of the Friends of the Server podcast, then you can subscribe on YouTube or even on the iTunes Store or Google Play, and I'm hoping that we can get Spotify up and running here very soon as well. Oh, and I also run plenty of other server management and ownership tips and tricks right on my YouTube channel, which you can check out in the show notes. There will be a link there for you to click and subscribe and check out the other content on my channel. But that's all I've got to say for now, guys. It is time to get into the conversation with Gianluca. I hope you all enjoy. What is up, my people? It is time to get digging into this conversation. I'm back here on the Minecraft 1.13 survival world. This is my whitelisted server for fans of the channel and the podcast. If you want some information, then definitely hit up that description down below. I've got a special guest with me today, and I'm excited to ask him a few questions and get some of his knowledge and expert opinion on some things, and I think that you guys are really going to enjoy this as well. And I gotta tell you guys, Gianluca, who's my guest here with me on this interview island, he has quite a lot of experiences with the Minecraft world, and that's including YouTubers and server owners and just all types of cool stuff. So let's get right into some of these questions, but I guess you probably want to see his face first, right? Well, here he is. Gianluca, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, man. Hey, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, yeah, it's a pleasure. It is a pleasure. Hey, so
If you could, I could probably butcher a lot of this, and we're going to get into some questions here in a minute. But while we're just kind of wandering around, I think I saw some drowns over in this direction. While we're kind of wandering around, could you tell people a little bit about just who you are and what you do and what you've done? And we can go into more detail on that as ask more questions.
All right, sure, not a problem. So essentially, I'm what I would call an OG Minecrafter because I've been playing the game since 2010 and been involved in servers since around that time as well. Fun fact, I actually started servers before even Craft Bucket was a thing. We used to use another tool. So
wow.
Yeah, and that's that. And then because I started back then when the game really had nothing, I got into development primarily because of Minecraft and because it was so moddable back then when there was just nothing, it was just open world. And I just hated the fact that I had to give everyone the source code for my mods because we didn't have something like Forge back then in order for them to play on my servers. So we found the server platform back then called HMod and CraftBucket++, and it was a bit limiting, obviously, compared to mods because it was all server-sided stuff, but it was a lot more fun than handing everyone out the source code to everything I developed. So, yeah, Minecraft has essentially got me to where I am today in terms of my future, because I now want to get into software engineering.
Ah, excellent. Now, you currently full-time work with Minecraft development, servers, and that sort of thing. You're working full-time with Minecraft?
Yes, both with servers and doing a bit of content coordination for some YouTubers.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, what happened? Now, you did the development, you did the modding, and Craft Book plus all that stuff that was going on that you already described. At what point did you start working, like actually working as a job with Minecraft content creation and development and server management?
Okay, so I started back in playing the game, as I was saying, around 2011, 2010 for servers like properly. And I got into it as a part-time job in 2012 when I just started high school because I had a bit of free time and everything. So yeah, I started doing part-time, like just small plug-in commissions for guys through community Skype channels. Like we had a lot of those back in the day, and I saw that some other guys were getting paid to do this. Now I knew nothing about making money online at that time. I was just doing it purely as a hobby. And then I started and I saw that, oh, wow, there might be some potential to this. And because I was just starting out, I obviously had a much cheaper price than many other people. So I built up quite a few relationships with quite a few reputable server owners from that time, and a lot of whom are still doing servers today. And because of that relationship that I held with them about 2 years later, so now we're in, say, 2014, they were paying me through freelancing, all of them enough to make it as a full-time job. So around 2014 was when I probably went into it as a job.
That's pretty incredible. That is,
yeah.
So you've been doing this for a few years now, and
yeah,
I think that's really, really cool to hear. And I said this in my last interview as well with Gilly. I don't think that people necessarily realize all the time that you can find work. You can actually make money doing Minecraft stuff, right? Whether that's managing servers or development. And
yeah, especially nowadays with all the stuff you can do in Minecraft, it's a lot for one guy to take in. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity at servers to sort of do this stuff as well.
I wanted to get into that a little bit more later on, but I just want to ask you right now, are you saying that there is more opportunity today for finding work with Minecraft, paid work, than there was in the past?
Oh, definitely, because In the past, it was all like geared towards one thing. Like everyone wanted to mod the game. Now we've got servers that there's to make money there, owning servers, managing, developing, building, all that kind of stuff. There's professional builders, even on the Bedrock edition, which is also fantastic, is now also introduced a lot more job opportunities for those people through the Minecraft marketplace and everything. There's the YouTube side of things, managing for content creators and even making your own videos. The Spigot premium resource repository also makes guys a good amount per month and stuff like that.
That's really cool. So any of you young guys and gals out there who, want to work in game development or development in general or, YouTube content creation, you can still do that with Minecraft. That is coming from a guy who does it currently in Minecraft.
Yeah.
That's cool. Hey, real quick, before I get to the next question, I have this treasure map here, and it says that the treasure is right over in this area. So I'm just going to dig around over here. You are welcome to join me, and there should be a chest underneath this sand at some point. I'm not sure how far down it'll be, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
All right.
Now, I know on Twitter you have talked about some different projects that you're working on with Minecraft.
Yeah.
You recently said something like newest Minecraft project is a go. Can you share any information? I don't know if any of that is secret.
All right. So for the majority of the last 4 or so months, I've rarely done any server stuff. I've been primarily focused on like assisting some of the YouTubers I work with in content coordination, but I've been getting back into it, and I've actually picked up a developer position at a medium-sized YouTuber's upcoming server. So that was the new project that I had started. And then a few of the I can't go into detail there because there's nothing really to talk about, but a few of the other ones are I'm actually working on a 1.13 survival server for 2 really big YouTubers, and that's going to be launching soon. So that's one of the other projects that I've been putting a ton of work into. And then the other project is just a small Skyblock server, just to have a go at my take on Skyblock, as opposed to using a lot of the generic plugins. Want to try add a few twists here and there. Same to all the networks that I've been working on.
Oh, that's very cool. How do people do you look for these jobs, or do people find you?
Okay, so it's a mixture of both. So what actually happened for some is I've actually got notifications on for when a new thread is posted in the hiring developers section on Spigot, because that tends to be where a few of the reputable server owners go to hire new developers. So that's one of them. So there's that. Plus there are a few Discords that a lot of them post to beforehand, before posting on Spigot, because on Spigot there's a wait time for approval, so it takes a bit longer. So if they want a more instant response, they normally message in one of the Discord servers. And and I've also, as I said earlier, built up a lot of relationships from a few years ago. So I have that advantage that I already knew the guys, and they know what I'm capable of.
Yeah, sure. No, that's cool.
And a few of the other times, it's because of these relationships that I've built. They vouch for me when other guys are looking, and then I get contacted that way. So it's sort of a mixture of both ways.
Okay, all right. Well, that's great. In the past, you have worked on some pretty massive projects, like large server networks. I know that was something that you had mentioned to me a few weeks ago. What was your role, your primary role with those types of projects? Were you like an administrator, a staffer, developer? What did you do with some of those large networks?
So a majority of them was both development and system administration. So with large Minecraft servers, over 500 or so players, we run multiple bungee cord instances, for an example, so that are all synchronized through using a relational database types such as Memcache or Redis, or a caching mechanism, sorry. So we've got all that. So my job was to set up those and make sure they're all working fine, and then monitor that as well, alongside obviously plugin development.
Gotcha. And while you've been working at those major projects, have you, what would be probably the biggest lesson that you've learned?
Well, obviously this may sound obvious, but it's to take backups regularly. You never know when something might go wrong.
Yeah.
So that's something we learned. One of my projects that I worked on last year, which is a server that's still online, it's called the Squad MC. I set up the entire backend. So I set up the game servers, the proxies, and the databases, and synchronized everything. And come to the moment we were about to go live, at the moment they were about to stream, I changed something and broke the entire setup that I had made, and didn't have a backup for that.
Oh no. Yeah, backups are critical.
Yeah. And nowadays there's even plugins that do them, so there's really no excuse to not be taking regular backups.
Hey, speaking of which, now you've done, you're on the resources team at Spigot MC. So you probably have seen a ton of these backup plugins that are out there. Are there any that you would like to recommend? Are you allowed to recommend any?
Well, I haven't really used any plugins, because I tend to find just making a script that does it a lot simpler, because I already had one pre-written, and it also backs up more than just the actual Minecraft server side. So I'm not sure, but there was one that looked really nice. It was a premium plugin. It was really cheap, and like seemed to have backup everything. So
yeah,
there's that as well. Can't remember its name, but there's a cheap premium backup plugin that works well. So
cool. Yeah, I mean they're out there, right? Like it's not hard to find those. I did want to clarify for those who are listening in who don't know that you're on the Spigot Resources team. What does that mean that you're on that team?
Okay. So recently they had positions for the resource team available, but they had been filled. But what those positions entailed were only half of what we do. So when I joined the resource team, now this is 2 years ago now, there was a lot of resources being submitted as premium, because a lot of what we could do became available. Everyone wanted to submit plugins. So part of what I did was they would submit a plugin. Now there is a queue for premium resources, because the first update as they submitted has to be manually checked.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. I would manually check the resource and make sure it's fine. But I actually used to put a lot more effort than I should have back then. I would actually download the plugin first, first decompile it, make sure there's no malicious code, run it on my VPS server, test and make sure all the features work, and then check their plugins page and make sure everything is all fine there. The terms of service is within Spigot's rules, and they're not using anyone else's code and everything. And if that was the case, as opposed to just immediately rejecting the resource, I would PM them and explain the issues that they had and have them fix it. And then I would just work on that draw right there. But now if it doesn't match the requirements, we just reject the plugin. So that's one of the things we do, is accept and reject premium plugins.
Mm.
The other thing that we do is handle resource reports. So we rely a lot on the community who use plugins to find any malicious code or anything that isn't meant to be there, stuff that isn't following the spigot terms or stolen and re-uploaded plugins, and they report them to us, and we handle the reports accordingly, like delete the plugin or delete plugin updates if they're spam updates, and just keep everything within the guidelines. So that's what we do.
Gotcha. So you have essentially, to sum it all up, you have worked with a lot of different, or you have experienced or connected with a lot of different plugin developers and server owners to make sure that these resources are good or safe at the very least.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, thinking about the large server networks that you've been a part of, I want to ask you a question, but I wanted you to know I did find that treasure chest. If you want to go down and check it out and see what's in it, because I know you, not too many people have a lot of experience with 1.13, but it's right down here. And while you look at that, I will ask the question of, with those large server networks, what do you think that small server owners might not understand about large servers and large networks? What is something that you think they misunderstand or they might be confused about, or a misconception?
Well, a lot of the comments that I've seen on some of the Discord servers that I've been in for guys who I've shared or given my 2 cents to, they all think that running a large server is different than running a small server, when it's almost exactly the same thing. Like, we run the same jars, the same plugins, or maybe not the same plugins, but the same generalized stuff. Like, we still run Bungee code. It's not that we have anything fancy doing anything. The only thing that's really different is we need our databases, we change, and we don't really use shared hosting. We go SSH indirect. So that's one of the things.
Gotcha. Now, as far as the, community management or team management side of things, are there any major differences that you have experienced?
Well, a lot of people on smaller servers do it as a fun hobby, something, and those servers aren't as big, so it isn't so much of an issue. And not to mention that a lot of the community or project management on smaller servers is all volunteer based, whereas on some of the larger networks, well, obviously the communities are a lot larger, and everything is more of a paid position, so they tend to take it a lot more serious than the others.
Gotcha. So
and that's really the only difference.
Is there anything that small server owners who do want to get to that point of having a large server in the future, is there anything that they can do to prepare themselves for that, or to practice or to get experience so that they can succeed in the future?
There's a few things. The first one being is to move away from using a panel and shared hosting, because that's a lot less secure than running everything on the DEDI itself. And instead of using shared hosting, they can get a cheap VPS, and they can spend an hour or so on YouTube learning how to run the basics of SSH and dedicated server management and everything. Because when you add a large network, you do get those guys that try to sort of break your security and get into your stuff. So if running a panel avoids you using some security measures that obviously you would want to have. So to prepare, they should move to a VPS to start. So the pricing is generally the same. Put in those minutes to learn the basics, and everything else is pretty much the same. And then one thing that I've seen small server owners, a popular misconception amongst them, is that they all say that, premium resources are better than other ones because they're premium. That means the Spigot team approves their code quality and everything, when that's not the case. I'm the exact opposite. I try to use as many free and open source plugins as I can, because when you run in a large server with a few public plugins, it all comes down to how well developed they are. And if they're not running well, it's really difficult to change plugins once your server is launched. So you're going to be at a loss there.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point. And I guess, a question that could follow up on that is, at what point do you think that server owners need to find a custom plugin developer?
Well, it depends. Like many of the servers that I've worked at, we haven't really full-on custom plugins. A lot of what we've done is edits to open source plugins, which is again another advantage of the free and open source that I look for, as opposed to premium.
Sorry. You're saying on those large server networks, you didn't necessarily have a lot of custom plugins.
No, there's no real. No, we did have custom forks of plugins, like a lot of them, but we never actually wrote like anything really. We just forked a popular plugin, and that saves a lot of time because obviously all the skeleton and everything that's the initial side of stuff is already there. But if looking for a custom plugin developer, it depends. If you want something once off, it can be as you think of the feature, if there's nothing public available, or if they want something more long term, so long as they make an eternity doesn't obtain the developer in the end.
Actually,
there's no real set.
You got a little bit robotic there with that last sentence. Could I bother you to repeat that?
Okay, I was saying there's no real need, there's no real set time to get a custom plugin developer, just so long as you have enough to purchase what attribute or element you need in your plugin, you can go for it then. Because even take a look now at their servers.
Yeah.
Are almost all generic game modes with just little twists on small things. And from experience and freelancing at some of those, I can tell you that there's not many that use a lot of custom plugins, like full-on custom plugins.
Yeah. This is something that I've had a conversation with a few people about, is that it's hard to make a really unique server. And people who claim to be making a unique server, not to say that they aren't, it's possible, right? But the likelihood that they actually have a unique game mode or unique gameplay mechanics on their server is fairly slim in my experience. And so is that your experience as well?
Yeah. The issue with that's actually a really good point. A lot of the community, when you try and launch a server, say, oh, be unique, when it's actually incredibly difficult to be unique. And if you want to develop a fully unique game mode, it can actually cost quite a fair bit. You're going to have to pay your developers to make such things, because if it's unique, obviously there isn't anything public available. And plus, there are then other expenses, such as a lot of them require resource packs. So you've got to now get a resource pack maker and everything. So going full on unique generally isn't worth it, because players nowadays, from what I've seen, don't really like to spend a lot of time learning something new, and they just join another server and have that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And that, honestly, it kind of goes against my own plan with my own server. I've been working for a while to get this unique game mode up and running. And, but I'm doing it for a different reason. I'm doing it because I love the game mode that I'm creating. And,
Yeah, no, obviously that's different.
Yeah. What is one of the biggest mistakes that you've seen server owners make?
Well, I'll split this into two bits. What I've seen smaller server owners make, and what I've seen larger server owners make, just because it's two different. So with smaller server owners, what I've seen is, I guess, a lot of them, quote, give up after a few days of launching their server because they don't have their players. Like, they've built the server and then they don't have the player base that they want from day one, and they get demotivated and quit. Whereas the ones who put in the effort to put a bit more time into perfecting their server and using the organic advertising methods. So that's ones where you don't pay any money and accept that success doesn't come overnight. They run their server, they've budgeted for it. That's basically the point, is where they don't budget for, and like say, right, I've made my server, my expenses are X amounts. I want to have this making profiting for itself after 4 months. A lot of them don't do that and just want something to happen on day one, which I think is the biggest mistake, because there's a lot of other options and it's hard to build a player base through organic methods on day one. So that's one of the things, is they don't budget and they give up really easily, which
a lot of people do tend, and this is true of a lot of different industries, right? Is that people expect to
it's more than just
they want to start something and then become a pro and become an expert and make all kinds of money and be super famous and all that, and it just doesn't work that way. You got to put in the time and the effort.
So as a sort of way to combat that and get a few opinions before they launch their server, what I actually have a soft launch and then post my server in the rate my server section of Spigot, and then in a few Discords they allow a server rating. So that lets guys come on and look at your server from a different standpoint as opposed to just yourself. Because obviously if you're ready to launch your server, you think of it as it's perfect and it's ready to go. However, if you invite some guys on to test a few stuff and rate a few things, you get other opinions. You can see, all right, maybe if I change this, it'll be more appealing to players. And then you can advertise after that as well. So you've got your views from more than just yourself.
Yeah, that's great.
Which is really important to have.
Yeah. I want to let you finish the answer that you were giving about the biggest mistake that like larger servers have. And then I'd like to switch gears after that. But I didn't want to cut you off from being able to give that answer.
All right. So what I've seen a lot of larger server owners do is they like to be a quote behind the scenes person and just give everything to a developer or a team of developers, which generally isn't the best idea, because their vision may differ from the owner's vision. Like a lot of the larger server owners just really want to profit as much as they can, not really care about the games. And then when the developers run the servers and they don't add the stuff properly, it comes down to the owners, and then the players leave, and then now they're at a disadvantage. So they're generally not as involved as they should be in their initial server setup.
That is a really good thought, and honestly, in my last podcast episode, I talked so much about that. How server owners, they don't need to do everything, but they should be aware of what's going on and like have their fingers in things so that they can learn about what is happening. If they don't know development, if they don't know system administration, then they should learn those things so that they can make proper decisions.
One of the projects I was at recently was a decently sized server, and then when we changed running server panels to going panel lists, they put in the time to learn, and that server now is running fine, and everything is still working as should because of their involvement as well.
That's great. Absolutely. You don't want your team to feel like the weight of the world is on their shoulders.
Exactly.
Building team morale is just as much a part of being a server owner as actually running the server, right? So, no, that's cool. I'm really glad to hear you say that, because honestly, I've talked with a lot of people about this sort of subject, and I say pretty much exactly what you said. And we did not talk about that specifically beforehand. This is the first time I'm hearing you say that, but I've talked with other people about this same sort of subject. And there are so many people who think that being a server owner means you just tell people what to do, and then you don't have to learn how to do any of it. You don't need to learn any of the details, how it's supposed to be done. You just tell people to do it, and then if they don't do it, then they're fired or they're punished or whatever. And it's like, it's not good.
Yeah, that's the exact thing, because the owner itself, they are the face of the server. Like, it's their server. So they should have influence over what happens.
Hey, let's switch gears here and talk about some YouTube stuff a little bit. Now, I don't want to go too much into, running a YouTube channel or helping YouTubers, with their content, but a lot of server owners think about YouTubers for promoting their servers. I want to get into that, but before we do, can you tell me, like, you've worked on some big channels. Can you share what some of those big channels were and some of the things that you did for them?
Necessarily, what I did for the large channels was set up or manage their servers and networks, because that's essentially what I do. I run a company that does full-scale server management and everything that's aimed towards the YouTubers, because, as I said, I built up the relationships beforehand, small. And aside from the actual public servers, the stuff that I really did for them was like event servers where they wanted to get a couple of their subscriber base on and have a sort of event. That's what we did. And the smaller channels, we were really just giving them the servers to record on through an equity deal.
Within that, right? Within, the servers that you're setting up for some of these YouTubers, did you get involved at all on the side where like another server owner might approach them for an advertisement deal?
Really often. So what happened is because let's say we run a network with just say Prison Survival and Skyblock, just for argument's sake, the YouTuber themselves will not record Prison factions in Skyblock. They'll generally record one game mode, say Skyblock, for example, and then another server owner will contact them and they'll see they're doing Skyblock on their channel, so they're in regards to promotion for Skyblock, and they'll use one of the other game modes that they aren't promoting on their channel, and it's sort of a win-win situation for the user. And it doesn't really come at a loss to either parties, because if they record our server, a majority of the fan base is going to be playing Skyblock here because chance to be in the video. So factions is going to be another server, and the one that the other guy promotes, or the YouTuber promotes for the other guy, will not be the same game mode, and the fan base is shared between the two. So the server that they generally own takes a small hit, but it's never anything noticeable.
I see. So there's actually some strategy that's being done beforehand and discussed in depth beforehand to determine what game modes are going to be shown off on the channel. If a server has multiple game modes, they want to choose a specific one to show off. Okay, gotcha. Well,
because if I'm paying a YouTuber just to record on my server, he's going to have some specific things to show. Like you might have to mention a sale, showcase some of the new stuff on the server that we've added or anything. Whereas on his own network, he can literally do what he wants because it's his server.
Ah, yeah. Well, now what would you recommend for server owners who are their first time approaching a YouTuber? What kinds of things should they have prepared beforehand before they even, start reaching out to those YouTubers?
Okay, so one of the most important things that is often overlooked is you need to have a server set up beforehand. The server you want them to record on has to be 100% launch ready, so you can showcase it to them within the email or however you're contacting them. Because if you just say, I want you to record on my Skyblock server, they tend to say, but it's just an ordinary Skyblock server. Whereas if you have a showcase server and you list a few things that are on there, they're more than likely to respond. So that's the first thing, is to have your server set up 100% beforehand. As opposed to that, when writing the email or DM on Twitter, as some smaller channels use, professionalism is key. Your email has to be in proper English and follow all the proper grammar stuff and things like that. Even the smallest details to be there, because if they see that you put a lot of effort into their email, they're likely to respond, because they get a ton of emails asking for promotion like almost every day. So you've got to have that shows. And promotion for if it's your first time, I generally wouldn't recommend going for larger YouTubers. It's going to be much more beneficial to have maybe 3 or 4 smaller YouTubers than one large YouTuber, and will have a less of an impact on the wallets as well.
Yeah, sure. And also, if you are just getting started with your server, you might want to have a smaller YouTuber feature it because you might not necessarily be ready for a huge influx of new players.
Yeah, that's another really good point, is to start small, because you might think your server is ready and then it crashes due to the amount of players joining and everything. And this is something big that everywhere. Like on one of our projects, we had a nice back-end setup, but we couldn't hold the players that one of the larger YouTubers brought, and they were streaming. And then we were out that whole day trying to fix the issue. So we missed out on so much because the server was down and they were meant to be streaming. So
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, something that you mentioned about professionalism and all that, I think I already know the answer to this because I've talked with a few YouTubers myself. But that professionalism, I think, could you talk about, you know, or maybe even just confirm my suspicions here that if a YouTuber has a crazy personality, if they are, you know, all screaming and jumping and laughing and telling jokes the whole time, that does not mean that you talk to them and speak to them unprofessionally, right? That's...
Oh, yeah, no, of course.
That is a brand that they have created. But when it comes to business, you got to talk with some good business sense.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the channels that put on a sort of character that's like that are actually completely different off camera, and so it needs to be dealt with in a professional manner. Like a lot of them, a lot of large channels are like some of the guys talk to daily and their numbers and everything. Even when I talk to them, I make sure my messages have proper grammar and everything, just to make sure that they know I'm serious when I talk about this stuff.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Now, when a server is ready to, you know, have a YouTuber on there, they've got everything prepared, they've reached out to the YouTuber to come and show off, and they even have an agreement. What kinds of things can a server owner expect to happen from that new relationship, right? Will they... Go on.
This is a really good question. So we have this saying that we've been using, well, not we as in my group, like as a server owner community, we've had this saying that goes, when your server is released and you get a YouTuber for advertisement, it's their job to bring the players, but it's your job to keep the players. So if you get, say, a live streamer, everyone will join your server because they want to be seen in that live stream. And when the live streamer goes, it's a given that at least 50% of the people who join during the stream will leave the server. That other percent that stays to create content that keeps them. Because if, say, 200 people join from your server, from the streamer, and then 50% leaves, now you've got 100 players on your server. We'll use what's called the 1% strategy. So from those 100 players, if all of them, just say, for example, spend $1 every month, you've now got $100 coming in every month. But there will always be that 1% that will donate a bit more. So you've got to then create content updates to keep those players, to retain them on your server. And as well as putting content updates on your server, which will be fantastic when you have new YouTubers come on and record, as well as for your old player base to enjoy, there's also the potential of adding new stuff to your store to increase revenue. So there's that.
That's all great. You're talking strategy and numbers and not overestimating and, you know, thinking about that you're just going to become, you know, a rich server owner overnight, but actually planning these things out with these server owners. And I think that's really smart.
I was going to say, even with that in mind, there's a chance that some months, even if you have a decent player count, that you might not break even. And that shouldn't be a demotivating factor. You just got to see why the players left, and you can work on improving those elements to retain the players and bring in new ones. Because you also want to keep pushing your server out there. Because just getting one YouTube once and you make a lot of money that you think now I'm set for life, when that's not the case as well.
Yeah. Now, what kind of budget do you think people should have when they're looking at some smaller channels? Right now, you mentioned smaller channels versus larger channels having a different budget and all that. What are some of those numbers there? Right? Is a smaller channel somebody with 30,000 subscribers or 1,000 subscribers?
All right. Let me say subscriber count is completely irrelevant. Our channel that gets 10,000 views per video and 100,000 subscriber channel that gets 8,000 views per video.
Yeah.
A lot of the server owners look at before the views, and that's where they get over as well, because the big channels factor in their subscriber count. So there's that. So as opposed to budget for a smaller YouTuber, I would say it'll generally go on what they're expecting. So I'm going to base on an assumption that they want at least 30 to 50 during peak time. And for that, you can easily make your money's worth back if you invest just over $300 into your first 2 or so months of advertising. So that comes to just shy of $1,000 over 3 months, whereas you should only be paying for the first month, because the money that comes in, none of it should be profit when you're starting. It should all go back into your server until you're making it back properly and then profiting on the side.
I see. So a proper budget of, well, I guess depending on what your plans are and what your definition of success is, right? That might vary a little bit, but you would say $1,000 is a good number to start with.
I'd say to start with would be 500, and using that 500. This is an advertising budget. It's not for starting the server. That's completely different.
Sure.
A $500 advertising budget will be able to bring in at least $300 to $400 per month. So after your second month, you've already made back $500, and now you've got an extra $300 to invest on top of that into advertising. Plus, if you're starting out, that money, once you've made it back, should go right back into the server. There should be no profits until your server is at an enterprise level. Like, you shouldn't be saying, "Oh, great, I'm going to have made an extra $100 from now." That $100 can go a long way if you invest properly, because now you can reach out. This also goes for stress testing as well. So you also get smaller channels which bring in smaller players. You can see if your server can handle those. You can approach larger channels, get players, and build your server up from there as well. Because if you invest, say, $500 into advertising, and after your first month, or after the first video, the server crashes due to a lot of players joining, they're not going to join the server again, because why they join a server that keeps crashing? So you've got to build it up.
Yeah, that's great. And, that's something that I've given a lot of thought to myself. There are a couple of live streamers that they typically get about 1,100 or so people in their streams whenever they're live streaming. And I'm waiting to bring them onto my server until I do a little bit more stress testing. And then my purpose with them is not even necessarily to get a ton of new players, because these guys they're live streaming, and like you said, a lot of those players are probably going to leave immediately after the stream is over and never come back. But I want to do that stress testing, and I want to see, what features are going to cause the most problems, with lag or resource usage or anything like that. And so, that's a really good point that you bring up, is that getting YouTubers, live streamers and all that onto your server is not just for advertising the server so that you can get more players, but there are other benefits from doing that as well, and other uses for it.
Exactly.
That is all phenomenal information, and I hate to do this, but I did want to switch up the topic a little bit here.
Sure.
Maybe sometime in the future, if we can have another interview, another episode later on, that would be really cool, because you have a lot of great information, and I love these answers that you're giving here. And hopefully other people are going to take your advice. But I did want to switch things up a little bit and ask, what is it about successful YouTubers, but also successful server owners? What is it that makes them successful, right? What sets them apart from so many other servers out there? And these might be the Hive MCs, or, different servers that, build a great reputation, have 500 plus players on concurrently. What is it that sets those servers apart from smaller channels or smaller servers?
Smaller servers. Yeah. Okay, well, for starters, those servers are completely different to the other ones. Those are mini game servers, and they've been around for years on end. Some have been around for years. So they've built a loyal player base from when the game was small. And those guys have spent a fair bit of money on that server. So they're very unlikely to
Very unlikely.
play somewhere else.
Very unlikely to what?
They spent a fair bit of money on those servers throughout the years. So they're very unlikely to go and just leave that all behind and join another server. Plus, through word of mouth, they've brought on their friends to come and play a game that's different to Skyblock Factions, where it's a mini game. So that's what sets those really large servers apart, is that they've been around for ages. They offer different game modes, and they've already got the player base to sustain like large games. Like some games are like 50 versus 50, where you need 100 players just for that game. They've already got that. They've got that advantage over us. But other large servers, such as the large Skyblock and faction servers, are guys that have just a reputation in the community, and they've built a following themselves. And yeah,
no, that's cool.
That's one thing that sets them apart, is that they've got already a following of their own. Like there's one guy that purchased another server that was sort of dying, and because he's purchased it, the community knows that the server is good now, so they've got players now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's all reputation.
Is there anything with the mindset of those server owners that you would say is different?
Well, they're very familiar with the internal everything works. So they already have, like, from owning servers before, so they've already got their infrastructure set up. If you were to look at a guy who owns multiple servers, you'll see that all the servers, or all the game modes and all the servers he owns will be very, because they have found something that works for them.
Yeah.
And they just, what is the proper word? I can say exploit it, if that's a good term.
No, I think I understand what you mean, though.
Like some of them they use the exact same setup, multiple, just change the names and color schemes, get different people to promote it, and essentially built one server, and they it across 3 different networks. If I get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Man, like, there's just so much information here, and this question that I'm about to ask almost seems redundant at this point after everything that you've already said so much about. But I just want to ask you point blank, is one, is it possible? Is it really still possible today for server owners to make a sustainable income for their servers after all the EULA changes, after everything that's gone on, all the drama, the combat changes and all that? Is it still possible for Minecraft server owners to make a sustainable income? And within that, this might be a separate question, but how, there are a lot of players who don't like when servers make money. You know, there are people who say, if your server is making money, I'm not going to join you. How can a server owner make sure that it doesn't come across that they are money hungry, that they're only doing it about the money, and that they actually care about the community, right?
Okay, well, there's a few questions there, but I'll tackle the last bit. So how do players know that the server owner is not money hungry? Well, that all comes down to what they have on their store and how it's priced and the actual content of the server. So if the server has beautiful aesthetics, nice builds, fantastic graphics, beautiful website, store, and everything all matches a following theme, that's generally very eye-catching, and that's a great first impression that gives the players, so they go ahead and join that. After playing, they see that the content on the server is great, and they maybe want to purchase something, but then they check the store and they see that they're selling ranks for $400-$500, crate keys for $30 and everything. That's a dead giveaway that the server owner is money hungry. Or they're using a little tactic here where they price everything ridiculously high and then have like 85 to 90% off sale. So the players think they're getting a good deal when in reality it's the price they're going to pay anyway. Those are ways to know how a server, if a server owner is in it for the money and not the community.
Yeah. So basically, don't try to manipulate and exploit people to get their money.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
Essentially.
No, that's really good. Well, hey, I feel like you and I could talk about this for hours, because I have so many more questions that I want to ask you. But we need to wrap things up here pretty quick. So I have two more questions for you, and the first one is, what are some final tips that you would like to give to both new and older, larger server owners? Normally, I just ask for new server owners, but I'd love to hear your thoughts for larger server owners as well.
All right. So my tips for newer server owners is to, I'll give you my process in how I prep my server for launch.
Sure.
Tip I'll pass on to go ahead and try something like this and maybe manipulate it for them. So to focus on the small things, like changing the messages of a plugin to match your service theme, is actually a big game changer, because a lot of players actually know about plugins. So if they see all default stuff like essentials and everything, they know, the server just popped on essentials, did small bits of configuration, and then left it as is. So it's to change the little things, such as the items in menus, if that's an option, or the messages of the plugin, just to make everything match the service theme in terms of colors and aesthetics. So that's one of the things. And to do something similar to what I do beforehand is to get reviews and ratings from people before you go on app. So you get it from a player's perspective as well.
Yeah.
And those are the two tips I'd pass on to new server owners, is to make everything as aesthetically pleasing and to get a view from as many other people beforehand. Generally, those who have more experience in the game mode, if it's something generic.
That's great.
And then for larger server owners, there's nothing too much that I'd really pass on, aside from the taking backups and making sure you've got your network auto restarts when your players are at their lowest, so you're not losing the most amount of players when your server restarts, because that's a big thing as well.
Both of those are great tips.
Because the restarts are also really good, because you want to free up the garbage collector and the internal memory. So those are good, but you don't want to do it when you've got like key command players online.
Yeah, great. That is all fantastic, and I only have one question left for you, and that question is Minecraft dying?
Okay, so Minecraft as itself is not dying. it's actually growing. They're still getting purchases, and the reason everyone says the game is dying is people that are in the community that have decent following are leaving. So if you look at a bunch of YouTubers, it looks like a bunch of big YouTubers have quit. That means the game is dying, but that's not the case. We may have lost a few big channels, but we've gained tons more smaller channels. We may have lost a few larger servers, but we gained a few smaller scale servers that will reach to the same potential as that. So the game itself, servers and everything is not dying. It's just people that know people in the community, those guys, seems like the game is dying. If that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. I mean, I'm here as a small YouTuber, and I'm loving it. And I have talked to a lot of small YouTubers, and we agree, you know, that or even small server owners, right? Is that if a large channel goes away, that actually gives us space to move into, and that allows for those of us who have been, you know, putting in that work and putting in the time and waiting for that big opportunity. Well, that big opportunity comes when those other large servers or large YouTube channels actually shut down. So, you know, I see those things and I think that they're great. And, you know, to hear you say essentially what I've been talking about and thinking about a lot recently is really fantastic. So good thoughts there. Hey, Gianluca, I appreciate so much you being here today. I really wish I could just keep talking and talking because this is such a cool interview, and you know so many great things. And so thank you for all of that. And you know, if you could, you know, just tell some people in my audience how they can connect with you or follow you, maybe check out some of the projects that you're working on when you announce them in the future. And I'm trying to catch up with you around here, but you're running away real fast. I'll just come in and look at you. And if you could tell everybody how to find you, that'd be great.
Okay, well, I try and be available everywhere. Of course, Spigot, Twitter, and everything like that, but the best way is through Twitter. I share my announcements, I retweet the projects that I'm working on, and announce everything about that. And soon I'll also be available on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I saw a YouTube channel that popped up. So I'm gonna leave links to Gianluca's accounts. I think that Twitter is just at Gianluca, right?
No, Jen's Code. I wish I had
Jen's
Gianluca.
Code. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Jen's Code. I'll put that in the show notes. And then for your YouTube channel, is it Jen's Code or Gianluca?
It's just Gianluca.
Okay, great. Well, I'll put those links down in the show notes, guys. Go and check out Gian and all of the projects that he's working on, and definitely tell him thank you when you follow him for having such fantastic answers here today. Gian, thank you again so much. Well, guys, this has been a phenomenal interview, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm actually going to hopefully get a few more minutes here chatting with Gian because I have all kinds of new questions that I need answered, and maybe we can bring them back again sometime in the future. But thanks so much for watching today, guys. Be sure to hit those show notes for different links. You can also actually find Gianluca in the Server Owners United Discord. He's over there, and he chats with some players sometimes, and that is my own Discord, and so you can hang out over there with me and Gian and a lot of others as well. So hit that up in the show notes below, and I will see you guys all next time. Peace.